Jai Shri Radhe. So Vaishnav ko Jai Shri Krishna. Day 227 and Varta 231. The story of Madan Gopal, the scribe from Mahavan. Bhav Prakash. This is a devotee of Sattvic disposition in the eternal Leela. His name is Manoram, who manifests from Sheila and is thus a personification of her divine loving sentiment. Part 1. Madan Gopal had received initiation with the Lord's name. At that time he had requested Sri Gosaiji to grant him some seva. Sri Gosaiji granted him one Sri Thakurji to serve, and Madan Gopal served his Lord very nicely. He followed all the rules of the path just as Sri Gosaiji taught him. In the early morning, after attending to his ablutions and cleaning his teeth, Madan Gopal would go back home and bathe. He dressed, adorned and made offerings to his Sri Thakurji, offered Rajbhog Aarti, settled his Sri Thakurji down for his afternoon nap, and then partook of Mahaprasad. Then Madan Gopal would come to Gokul and daily listen to Sri Gosaiji's divine discourses on Sri Acharyaji's Sri Subodhiniji. He would constantly contemplate the innermost divine sentiments of Sri Subodhiniji, and Sri Gosaiji as well as Sri Govardhanaji were always pleased with him and revealed their private leelas to him. His Sri Thakurji granted him his direct experience. Madan Gopal followed Govind Swami around to listen to his musical compositions for Sri Thakurji, and he wrote them all down. He was totally addicted to listening to the padas composed and sung by Govind Swami. One day Madan Gopal's wife told him that their son had a fever. Madan Gopal remarked, "Everything is the Lord's wish." Then his wife secretly had a talisman tied round the boy's neck with a spell to counter the fever. Madan Gopal bathed and entered his Sri Thakurji's temple, but when he entered he saw that his Sri Thakurji was sitting with his back turned to him and had kicked the offerings plate onto the floor. Madan Gopal was very distressed by this and wondered what type of offence he had committed that had made his Sri Thakurji turn his back on him. Madan Gopal was sobbing as he rubbed his nose to the ground and pleaded with his Sri Thakurji. "Oh Maharaj, please let me know what offence I have caused you. I do not understand." He expressed his lamentations before the Lord. Then Sri Thakurji told him what had happened. Madan Gopal was very shocked and came to Gokul to see Sri Gosaiji. He bowed before him and touched his feet. Sri Gosaiji said, "Listen, your wife, without your knowledge, had a talisman tied around the boy's neck with a spell to fight the fever." Madan Gopal asked what he should do. He said, "My wife does not listen to what I say." Sri Gosaiji said, "If your wife does not listen to what you ask of her, then you should renounce her." Madan Gopal said he would do as he had been told, bowed to Sri Gosaiji and returned home. He addressed his wife, "Why did you do this?" He then arranged for her to live separately. He married someone else and continued to serve his Sri Thakurji according to Sri Gosaiji's instructions. He did not speak to nor have any interaction with the first wife. Sri Thakurji did not speak to him for a whole year. Madan Gopal made every effort to please him and make him speak to him again. He then did begin to talk with Madan Gopal again. Bhav Prakash, Vaishnava should be very careful to avoid taking refuge in anyone or anything other than the Lord. Thus concludes Varta 231, the story of Madan Gopal, the scribe who was the recipient of Sri Gosaiji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava. There is no end to his tale. Continuing now to Varta 232, the story of Rupa Manjari, born in Gwalior, who loved Nandadas. Bhav Prakash. Rupa Manjari is a devotee of Sattvic disposition. In the eternal Leela too, her name is Rupa Manjari. She is extremely beautiful. She is the close Sakhi of Chandralekha. Chandralekha used to tell Rupa Manjari all about Sri Thakurji's private pastimes. She manifests from Rupa and is thus a personification of her divine loving sentiment. She was born into a Kshatriya family in Gwalior. She was wonderfully pretty. Her beauty alone cast a shadow on the earth. Her father was a disciple of Sri Gosaiji, and he had had her initiated by Sri Gosaiji. When she grew up, she was married off to a man of Kshatriya caste. Her husband was employed by the emperor and lived in the emperor's palace. The emperor liked him very much and willingly followed his guidance. Rupa Manjari also came to live in the royal palace. The emperor was very attached to Rupa Manjari. He employed her as a maidservant and gave her her own palace to live in. Rupa Manjari was a very pious and righteous lady and told the emperor, "If you so much as touch me, I shall poison myself and die." The emperor gave her his solemn promise that he would never touch her, but requested that she let him see her face once a day, but live in the palace he had given her. She did so, and the emperor remained content just by seeing her face. Part 1. Rupa Manjari was the servant of the emperor, but he never touched her. She had threatened to kill herself if he did so. He remained content with a glance of her face every day and never touched her. Rupa Manjari had a small magic ball, a gutak, and when she put it in her mouth, she was able to travel to have the holy sight of Sri Govardhanaji. So powerful it was. After his holy sight, she would go to Sri Nandadas. She loved Nandadas very much. Bhav Prakash. Sri and Nandadas were closely related in the Lord's eternal Leela. Part 1 continued. She would listen to Srimad Bhagavatam from Nandadas, and they also discussed his other nectar-filled compositions. He wrote many compositions in Vraja Bhasha for her and about her. She learnt to sing from him, and she sang very well. She could also play the veena very well. Rupa Manjari's love for Sri Govardhanaji increased manyfold through her association with Nandadas. Sri Govardhanaji would come to her palace daily, so that she could see him. If on any day he did not manage to come to her palace, then she would miss him intensely and become crazy. Then Sri Govardhanaji would come to see her in her palace, and she became calm. Such was her immense love for the Lord. Some nights he would come to play chopar with her for hours and hours. His great grace was thus upon her. Bhav Prakash. This story tells us that we should keep the company of accomplished Vaishnavas all the time, so that our love for the Lord will grow. Thus concludes Varta 232, the story of Rupa Manjari, who was the recipient of Sri Gosaiji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava. Varta 233, the story of Fatih Krishnadas, a Kshatriya from Gujarat. Bhav Prakash. This is a devotee of Rajasi disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Krishna Parvina, who manifests from Rupa and is thus a personification of her divine loving sentiment. He was born to a Kshatriya in Gujarat. His body was very large. When he was very old, he came to Vraj. Part 1. Everyone called him Fatih Uncle. He was very intelligent and used to go around testing saints and sadhus. One day, Fatih Krishnadas came to Sri Gokul. He decided to test Sri Gosaiji. He entered Sri Navneet Priyaji's temple, where, at that time, Sri Navneet Priyaji was swinging in his cradle, and Sri Gosaiji was gently swinging him. Fatih Krishnadas had the vision that sometimes it was Sri Gosaiji pushing the swing with Sri Navneet Priyaji in it, and sometimes the other way round. He was amazed to see this. He thought to himself, out of these two, who is Sri Thakurji? He was confused. Afterwards, when Sri Gosaiji had offered Sri Navneet Priyaji his lunch, he came out of his temple. Fatih Krishnadas experienced the vision of Sri Navneet Priyaji residing in every pore of Sri Gosaiji's body. He prostrated before Sri Gosaiji and said, O Maharaj, I had come today here to test you, but you have tested me. I no longer have any doubt in my mind. Please initiate me as your disciple. I am a fallen soul. Sri Gosaiji was pleased by Fatih Krishnadas's humility. He immediately initiated him with the Lord's name, and the next day with the Brahma Sambandh. From that very moment on, Fatih Krishnadas came to experience the Lord's pastimes. This was in the Vasanta season. Fatih Krishnadas composed one poem about it. Pad Raj Vasant. Krishna, son of Nanda, full of youthful mood, is playing holy on the banks of the Sri Yamunaji river, in the groves of trees where the peacocks live. Krishna, upholder of the Sri Giriraj mountain, and his brother Balaram are together with all the cowherd boys. They gather to prepare the colours for the day, and then colour each other with it. The Mridanga, Upanga and Changa drums are beating. They all look wonderfully beauteous. The Muraj, Upanga and Dole drums beat the beat. The crowd noisily casts up into the air bags of multicoloured powders. Swarms of bees come there to enjoy the fragrance. They have become tinged with red, as if they have been squeezing nectar from flowers. They fly home in a joyous mood, but their partners say, You are not our husband, so red are you. Do not come here to sit like cheats. The 6-footed bees reply, Have you forgotten us? Not only we, but the whole world from earth to sky is full of gulal. Sri Krishna, protector of the cows, is playing Holi, the festival of spring. The poet Jara Krishna Das now sings, My Lord is the enchanting Mohan. Hearing this rendition, Sri Gosaiji was very pleased. He said to Fatih Krishna, Now the Leelas have been revealed to you, so you may now wander around Braj. Always immerse yourself in the contemplation of his Seva in your deepest heart. Fatih Krishna took his permission and left for Sri Govardhan. There he had the holy sight of Srinathji. He was overjoyed and established a throne for Srinathji's form in his heart. He continued to wander around the Vraja land. We'll pause our reading for today here. Sab Vaishnavan ko Jai Shri Krishna, Aaj ke Anand ki Jai ho ji, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.